Super Draco here, and we're back to continue building Pack 4 of Build G1 Optimus Prime. So picking up where we left off, we need parts 4-45 and 4-17, as well as 4-48 small washers and 4 3x6mm PM bolts. So we're going to go ahead and thread the washers onto the bolts. Now, at least once per video, I'm probably going to show doing the process, but after this, I'll probably just skip feeding the washers onto the bolts. So what we're going to do is 4-45 is going to attach to 4-17 via the 4 bolts. So what I'm going to do here is get my Allen key. And go ahead and have everything ready to go. So I can just go ahead and thread this in. Now, ignore my lack of dexterity at the moment, because it's kind of hard when you're trying to hold this piece and you only have one hand. Now that that's tight, we're going to go ahead and do the other 3. Again, at least once per video, I'm going to show everything. I mean, I've used this Allen key for a bunch of bolts already, so I don't think I'm blowing anyone's mind here with this. Alright, so now that we have that done, we need the previous assembly as well as part 4-23. So then we're going to need 4 of the 3x14mm PM bolts, and then 4 more of the small washers, 4-48. So then we're going to take all this and we're going to marry these 2 pieces together. So normally I cut this stuff out, but I don't see a point in it when it's not even 30 seconds. Now if you do want me to cut this out in future packs, put it in the comments. Okay, so the way this works is that part 4-23 is going to go there, and then sandwich with and be sandwiched with the assembly we just made. Now there's a little notch on 4-23 that lines up with the 4-17 assembly, and then we're just going to lock that in with the 4 bolts. Now I keep calling these bolts, but I think these are still screws. But that's a good thing to look up later. Do Allen key screws or bolts? So with that done, we're going to bring in part 4-24, and that's going to secure to our new assembly with two 3x6mm PB screws. You know if you've got the piece lined up because there's a notch on the previous assembly that matches up to the notch on the other side. Now this piece is actually the reason why we had to have that joint in the center aligned properly, because you'll notice in the center of that circle is an oval that matches the joint. If the joint was in the wrong configuration, this would have not locked together. So now we're going to move on. Okay, so next we're going to bring in our smokestack assembly from the very beginning. And then we're just going to mount those together with 4 3x8 bolts and 4 4x48 washers. Okay, and we're going to jump ahead to the last bolt. Alright. And so now we're going to move on to the next step. So we've got pieces TR 4-6 and 4-7. 4-7 is actually going to attach, and then we're going to mount it down with two 2.3 by 6mm PB screws. Now, just due to the nature of this is hard to film where exactly the screws are going. I think we had the same problem last time, so I'm doing the best I can. Like I said, New Year or tax time, I'm upgrading my entire setup. So now that that's done, we're going to bring in part 4-6, and they're just going to snap together. There we go. That takes an unsettling amount of force to put on plastics. Okay, and so then for the next stage we're going to need part 4-35 and 4 2.3 by 6mm PB screws. So just minding your orientation, 4-35 is going to fit in there, and then we're going to lock it down with the 4 PB screws. Okay, and so then we're going to do the exact opposite on the other side with part 4-34 and 4 more 2.3 by 6mm PB screws. And so with that done, we're going to move on to our next assembly. Okay, to kick off the next section, we need parts 4-11, 14, 26, and then 2 4-46 joints. So we're going to take the 2 joints and you want to insert them into 4-26 in that orientation. And again, this is another one of the things that takes a lot of force and makes me uncomfortable doing it to plastics. Alright, and so with that done, we're going to take 4-11 and insert this inside of it. This can only really fit in one way. And then once it's in, we're going to lock it down with two 2.3 by 6 millimeter PV screws. Then we're going to take part 4-14 and it's just going to loosely hang out right there. And if you remember from last time, it does not want to, without both sides, it doesn't want to stay in. Okay, so we've brought in parts 4-10, 4-42. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take our assembly and then just smush it together. That wasn't the most elegant way I have spoken. And then once it's together, we're going to lock it up with three 2.3 by 6 millimeter PV screws. Okay, so as I'm finishing up locking this together, parts 4-42 are screw covers. We're going to worry about those later once I make sure the build's all done properly. So with this done, next we're going to need parts 4-18, 19, and now a moment of ADD with Super Draco. Okay, so if you saw the short I posted, that was what triggered the short. That I've never seen this just randomly say nut before. And I don't know why, but I find that hilarious. So then we're going to need a nut, a 4-48 washer, and a 3 by 8 millimeter PM bolt. So parts 18 and 19 are going to sandwich at the top. And essentially you want the basically you want it how I have it, where you want the wider part facing toward the back. So then we're going to put the nut in the hex-shaped hole and then bolt and attach and lock it down with the bolt through the other side, just like we did on the other arm. Okay, so now that we've got that together, we're going to bring in this part, TR4-41. This is that band that in pack 2 that was revised. So then we're going to need parts 4-20, 21, 2 3 by 8 millimeter bolts, and 2 4 by 21 small washers. I think I was calling the small washers 48 before, but they are 21. 48 were the large disc-like ones, not the small ring ones. But This is probably lazy on my part, but I'm not going to redo the audio for 15 minutes worth of audio just because of that. So apologies here. So you want the band, so there's room for that piece to sandwich around like so. So we're going to go ahead and load our Allen key. Set that and hold that off to the side. Now the washer, there's a recess washer that the nut will drop into. So I just use a few quick turns down there. And then once both bolts are in, we're going to fully tighten both of them. The instructions don't say to make those super tight, so don't go too hard. You don't want to damage the plastic. Alright, now that we got that done, next we're going to need part 4-25. 4 more 3x8 PM bolts. 4 more 4-48 washers. And then 4 more nuts. Okay, so I just went ahead and cut me prepping the bolts. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop a nut into the hex-shaped socket, and then we're just going to bolt this panel down. So you just want to finger over the bolt. This isn't easy to film, so I'm going to apologize if the angle's not very appealing. And since we've done so many of these bolts before, we're just going to jump to the last one. Okay, and that's that assembly finished. So then we're going to bring in what we did, the upper piece we did before. So now what you're going to do is you want the lower piece to come in at an angle, and then the top will slide into place as you straighten it up, just like that. So then that's going to be held down with 4 3x10 PM bolts, 4 4-48 washers, and 4 nuts, 2 on each side. Okay, so I'm going to apologize for the quality of this footage, but this is remarkably difficult to film. Even if I was on a multicam setup, I don't know if I'd be able to film this very well. And I am too lazy to go review my other videos, but I think I'm having a deja vu moment because I think I said almost the exact same stuff before. Now, you notice my bolt's not wanting to grip into the nut. At first, I thought I had the wrong size bolt, that I had used a 6mm bolt instead of an 8mm. But what's actually happening is my washers, my 4-48 washers, for some reason, some of them have a really wide gap on them. And that gap is pushing the nut further out, or further away from the bolt, so it isn't able to grasp in properly. Because you see right here, I'm measuring the length of my nut, and that came out wrong, but we're going to go with it. And you see, I put a different washer on it, and then with enough leverage, now it's going in. Not quite yet, but it's you notice it's actually holding in there a little bit. So what I ended up doing is I ended up stopping the camera, and I had to bend the nuts into the proper shape. I don't know if the hot and cold temperatures as it was shipping affected it or what, or maybe they're just a bum batch. But either way, I did get this to work, so we're just going to cut me struggling because there's at least 15 minutes of struggling.